Okay. Hello. 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 It's very nice to have a mic here. Everybody listen. Everybody can hear. It's not too loud. All right. How about this? How about this? Cool. Okay. The reason why we have microphones and everything because we have a recording here. As you can see, there's photography and filming taking place. If you don't want your photo or video be taking place, please let me know so we can blur you out. Possibly. Today we're having a Fergie, who is the founder of the UK Varsity Challenge, and he has many startups experiences. And he came to us from London, and he's going to share his story now. So, round of applause, please, for Fergie. Thank you.
Is this all right? Is this all right? Thanks, Rinch. It's great to be here. And thank you very much for coming out this evening. I know spring is just about breaking, so evenings are getting better. So I appreciate your time. I'm going to talk about lean methodology this evening. And in doing so, just going to share with you some of my experiences of starting a couple of businesses. To varying degrees of success, I would probably add. And I also wanted to mention the UK Varsity Startup Challenge. I'll talk a bit about that later, but it's a national competition that I'm running to try and find the best startups coming out of universities and make access to mentorship and funding more accessible for people who are wanting to start businesses whilst they're at uni or as they're finishing. Just before I start, just a quick show of hands. Who here is sort of thinking about doing a startup? I can see your hands. So most of you. Who here has got an idea that they sort of think is an idea that they're going to run with, that they're going to work on? Okay, still most of you. Who here has got an early product or prototype that they've developed and it's in play? Okay, we're down to about 4 or 5 of you. And what about customers, early adopters? Have any of you got customers? Two lots of customers, paying customers? Okay, we've got 1 person with paying customers. Have you been funded at all? Kind of. Okay, that's great. So just wanted to get a sense of the room. I got to work out all this kit as well, so bear with me while I do. So yeah, this is the UK Varsity Startup Challenge, and that's why I'm here today. I have my journey in startups started probably when I was about 17, 18. Whilst I was at school, I decided I didn't want to work for straight out cash. I wanted to work in something that I was passionate about. And whilst I was at uni, undergrad up at Edinburgh, I did a lot in sports marketing and sports management. I was a big sports fan when I was a kid. I was also in particular a big skiing fan, and I'd done my ski instructor training on my gap year before going to university, and realized at the time that no one was running these types of courses in Europe. So as I was leaving university, I went about founding a company called Basecamp, and we catered for career break and gap year clients initially, running sort of typically season-long training courses that were sort of included a coaching, accommodation, freestyle, backcountry, first aid, language lessons. And we put people through their paces, taught them how to teach, taught them how to ski, got them through their qualifications, and then placed them into jobs all around the world. It was a great ride. I think within 3 years we were turning over $1 million. I took on my first part-time employee about halfway through that. So I was doing a lot of it myself. We had operations in a couple of countries after 3 years, and I was learning a lot about business and having a great time. Skiing probably about 50 days a year and making more money than all my mates in the city. So that was wild. However, it was pretty close not to coming off. I mean, this was right back in, when the web was still new. Websites were still very new. I think we were still accessing the internet with a 56K dial-up. But I got my website out, I got a brochure out, and then I just hustled. I used all the sort of resources that I had at my disposal to get the word out about Basecamp. And whilst everyone after their exams went off partying for the summer, I stayed at home at my parents' house and worked throughout the summer. I spent all of August cold calling every single journalist that I could find out the contact details for. And come the middle of August, we had about 5 clients, which wasn't enough to run a course. Thankfully, I managed to get editorial placed in the Times on A-level results day and in the largest ski and snowboard magazine in the UK. And that really got us our first sort of 20 or 30 customers for the first year, and away we went. I grew Basecamp throughout my 20s. We diversified into corporate trips. We diversified into school trips. We started running surfing and kite surfing courses as well, so water sports. I managed it through the financial crisis when our sales went from probably about a healthy 6 figures per month to 0. And at the same time, our cost base that we'd locked in for the upcoming season increased by 50% because sterling depreciated against the euro and the Canadian dollar. So that was a pretty interesting experience to go through. Fortunately, we had some very good relationships with our suppliers, and we went out and renegotiated that and did whatever we could to get some cash through the door and just about survive that year. The business came back, and in 2011 I decided whether I wanted to stay in adventure sports or go on to the next thing for my 30s. And I'd witnessed what technology and innovation had done to the travel industry while working in it. Low-cost airlines and direct online booking turned that whole tour operator business model upside down, or packaged holiday business model upside down. And I kind of realized that, that technology and innovation was going to be the game in town for the majority of my career, and wanted to get in that. So I sold my business. I went out to Asia. There didn't seem to be a lot happening in the UK at the time. And I founded a SaaS project management startup in Singapore. Whilst I was also in Singapore, I co-founded the Lean Startup Meetup there and grew that community to a couple of thousand members. Launched a social innovation accelerator in Bali. But decided that I wanted my life to be back in the UK. So I've been back here about 18 months now. Been involved in 1 or 2 startups, and most recently sort of been working part-time or contract for Startup Bootcamp, which is Europe's largest accelerator. So that's kind of what's led me to here today and to the challenge. But just wanted to give you a bit of context of what I've done in my up until now. So yeah, Anglia enter if anyone's got any questions who's not in the room with us here this evening. So this is something that's very personal to me, which I've already touched on, but I don't think there's any point in doing a startup unless you're absolutely passionate about what you do. I think, and this is something that I've learned throughout my working life to date, to become increasingly important, but I think being happy is the most important thing, and doing something you love and that you're passionate about is key to that, and making sure that you enjoy your work is also very important as well. You spend maybe 80% up to 80% of your waking life working, during your career, perhaps, certainly during the week, that is. And I don't think there's any point doing that if you don't enjoy it. I would also say that passion is a great characteristic, if that's the right word. It can really drive you, make all the hard work worthwhile. It can keep you going when everything looks like it's a disaster in front of you. So I think if there's one thing you could take away this evening from me personally, it's that be passionate about your startup. However, passion can get you into trouble sometimes. You can end up making decisions based purely on emotion without any rational argument. What Lean does is kind of gives you a framework to guide you through all this decision making and helps you enhance your passion to excel at what you do. By the way, Lean, like I'm sure a lot of you have heard Lean methodology in reference to startups. It was coined by Eric Ries, The Lean Startup, which is a great book and a must-read if anyone is just getting into startups. But actually, it's a manufacturing methodology that I believe Toyota devised in the 80s about being very smart with the way you work and smart in how you use your resources. Just to give you a bit of background. Okay, so as I said earlier, I left university and went straight into starting my own business. I'm very jealous of all my contemporaries who went into corporate jobs. They had huge institutions, a lot of graduate training to help them learn and discover what business is about for them. But in startups, you don't have any of that. It's a process of learning through doing. And invariably, you're going to make tons of mistakes along the way. So I think it's very important. I think it's important to look at how you make mistakes. There's a certain art to it as well. Speaking from my own personal experience, but when I started out doing my first business, if my comfort zone was, say, here, I used to drop myself in the absolute deep end. I wanted to get as good as I could, as fast as I could. And I thought by putting myself in situations where I was so out of my depth, I would learn faster. However, what I've realized is that actually what I was in fact doing was just making myself stressed out. And if you're stressed out, your performance levels drops, and you can become ineffective, and you can actually go backwards or stay stagnant rather than moving forward. So I think there's a real art to making mistakes. And I would encourage anyone, instead of taking large, long strides like I was trying to do, is to take lots of small steps. So if your comfort zone is here, just trying to push yourself just a bit outside and learn how to push back your comfort zone and grow as quickly as you can, but while keeping your fingers in touch with your feet on the ground and keeping in contact with your customers, with your suppliers, with your team, so that you're making decisions with full access to information without being locked into taking a big stride and being disconnected from the world around you. I would also say that this helps minimize potential downsides because you can react fast. And I would also say that this helps you use a blend of intuition and analytics, which I think is really key to sort of startup methodology. You want to back up the ideas and how you read and judge or interpret information with hard facts, and by keeping in contact with the people around you, particularly your customers, you're far more likely to make the right decision on balance more often than not. Right here. Okay, so usually a business or a startup, I should say, is solving a particular problem for a particular type of person, and you're using a team or a business model to achieve that solving of the problem. So you've got three main areas in problem solving. You've got your customers, which I think I would argue, and I think most people would agree, are the most important. You've got your product, which is your solution to the problem that your customers have. And then you've got your team, which is developing the customer base and building the product or service to solve the problem. And I think these are three key elements of Lean, and I'm going to talk a bit about each one of those. There tend to be two types of problems that you're solving, or ways that you do it. One is you're making someone's life infinitely better than it used to be, or you taking away a big pain point that someone has. So your problem can be a high, or it can be solving a low for someone. But I think it's important to acknowledge and distinguish between the two. Also, when you're doing your analysis of this problem, you should be doing lots of market research. And when you're doing market research, you're invariably making assumptions, whether people like or dislike certain things, have certain types of behavior, who your target market is, whether the right solution is a mobile app or a web app, or even something not technical at all. So you want to be very clear about what assumptions you're making, and you want to outline those very clearly. And when you test those, what you want to do is to try and not test them to pass them, but test them to fail them. If you test them to pass them and they turn out to be inaccurate, you could spend a lot of money and a lot of time on a business model that is invalid. When, if you'd done your due diligence earlier on, you could have saved yourself hours, days of your life. So talked a bit about how you structure a problem, a bit about doing some market research. I think also the most important point I want to make on this is that your initial idea to solve a particular problem is just the catalyst. Actually, what's going to make your startup successful is all the hard work that you do from that point on. The idea is what gets you emotionally engaged, gets you excited, but most VCs and most investors would prefer to back a good team with a bad idea rather than a bad team with a good idea, because they know that the good team is going to execute far better and be successful. If it's not this idea or an iteration of this idea, it'll be the next one. So I don't think there's any substitution for hard work, common sense, and really committing yourself to your startup. So I talked about customers, who you're solving it for. There's lots of ways that you can identify customers. There's lots of social demographic data, age, wealth, interests, hobbies, for example, where someone lives. And I think in identifying a set of customers where you start, you want to try and get that as narrow and as focused as possible. You'll often hear in your entrepreneurial journey someone identifying a $20 billion market and wanting to just take 1% of that. And every time anyone that I respect has heard that, they've immediately switched off. It's not about, I think that's completely the wrong way of looking at it. It's upside down, in fact. How you want to build your customer base is you want to find a group of people that are really passionate about the problem that you're solving it for, and you want to do an excellent job for them. And then you want to grow that base in a circle effect. And ideally that holy sort of word of mouth, holy grail word of mouth. So I would encourage anyone to look at how they identify their customers in a narrow and as focused way as possible. Once you've identified who your customers are, you can then start thinking about how you're going to reach them and your marketing. And you've got a whole suite of marketing options available, whether it's PPC, pay-per-click, whether that's Google or Facebook, SEO, search engine optimization, that is, social media, digital PR, so blogs, more traditional PR, so looking at broadsheets, consumer and trade magazines. Offline, you've got events and outdoor advertising and promotional campaigns. And I would go out and start speaking to your customers about what they read, how they consume information and what type of information, and start exploring how engaged and receptive they would be to potential messaging that you want to send out. So you've got all these different options of how you can market, and you need to go out and start beginning to test them and test whether they'll work with your customer base. Once you've started finding messaging that they're going to receive in the way that you want them to, then you start looking at sales, and a great term is onboarding as well. So how you're going to onboard them onto your application, or how you're going to get them from someone who is a lead, but then someone who's talking about a particular purchase or acquisition or using your service to becoming an engaged user. Yes, that sort of starts, price is one point of that, but also I think value is as well. And it's far easier to convert someone who you're solving a big problem for to a customer than a small problem. Invariably, everyone's very busy in their lives. There's a lot of inertia around getting people to switch services. So when you're looking for problems that customers have, you want to look for the biggest ones, and for a really focused number of customers. Come in. So just to sort of carry on sort of looking at this sort of lean triangle, as it were, you've got your idea or the problem that you're solving. You've started engaging your customers and speaking to them about validating your intuition and your hypothesis that this is actually a problem they have. And you're beginning to get some information back or some data back about how you can get the message out to them, and once they're starting receiving that message, how many of them are going to convert, and how quickly, and how much effort it's going to take, and how you're going to do it. Then you've got to, once you've identified your customers, you then got to go about building your product or your solution to the problem. As I touched upon earlier, there's loads of different types of solutions. Sometimes the best ones are the simplest, and quite often they can be solved through an offline solution or hacking together some services that already exist. They don't need a flashy, flamboyant, expensive product. But when you're building your product, you want to do it in a way that is very flexible and very agile as well, so that you can maneuver your product into the fit that the customers want, and that you can make changes very quickly and be very reactive to the information that you're getting back from your customers. Talking through self-experience here, I spent a year building a web application. I thought at the time that the better design it had, the more features that it had, the more sophisticated and clever it was, were the things going to make customers buy it. It took me about 6 to 9 months before I started speaking to customers. So I was building what I thought they wanted rather than what they were telling me that they wanted. And went out and took it to market. I was about 60% right. To be successful, you've got to be in the 90s, if not 100%. To get word of mouth and viral marketing, you've got to be 100%. So I then had to go and move this evolve this very expensive product that I built with all these bells and whistles, with all these very broad feature sets. And by the time I got it back into market testing and had maybe improved it, the market had evolved itself. So I was always chasing the market and I was never leading it. What I should have done was go out to the customers that I wanted to solve this problem for, find what their biggest challenge was or frustration was, and then go about and build a feature, a solution to that problem that solved one feature at a time. Taking it back to them, got their feedback, evolve that in a very simplistic manner. If they're using it without any design, without making it sexy or jazzy, imagine how well you're going to be able to sell it once you've done all those things to it. And then once I was happy with how I'd solved that problem, taking their next biggest problem within, say, project management or sales or whatever you have, and then follow the same process in solving that. This sort of terminology, the terminology is banded around, but I mean, minimum viable product is one of the things I'm describing there. But I'm really talking about a work methodology that keeps you light on your feet, keeps you agile, allows you to move fast, allows you to move your product into product market fit. So it's the right product for the right market at the right time. And do this all in a very inexpensive way that you need to be able to do when you're a startup. I would also add that agility is a key competitive advantage. The incumbents that you're trying to disrupt or the competitors in your market who have more money than you are going to have a whole suite of competitive advantages over you. And being agile and fast and reactive in a startup are the key competitive advantages that is going to make your startup a success. Okay, how are you going to make money? So you've now got your idea, you've got your customers, you've got your product, and you really need to kind of put a business model around this. You've started talking to your customers, so you know how much it's roughly going to cost to reach them, or per 100 customers or per 1,000 customers. You've built an early version of your product, so you know roughly how much it's going to cost to build it. You usually probably won't have very many overheads when you start up. You're going to be out of your bedroom or your parents' house or in a garage somewhere. But further down the line, when your business model evolves, you're going to start putting in a team and in an office, and you're going to have more fixed costs. But these all give you an indication of what you should be pricing to make this business model successful. It is an exception to the rule to be able to grow a business like the social networks or search engines that you've seen come out of America, where you can raise hundreds, if not billions of dollars before you start bringing in revenue. Most ordinary businesses, and particularly ones not in San Francisco, need to start thinking about making money from the start. And investors won't back you unless you do. So you really need to start speaking to your customers about what prices you can charge them to cover your costs and to keep you afloat. That's one approach to pricing, is what your break-even price point is. There are various other different approaches to pricing as well. And there's lots online if you want to Google them and research. I'm particularly a big fan of value-based pricing. If you sell someone on value, then they'll stick with you as long as they're receiving that value. If you sell someone on price, As soon as someone comes along with a better price, which there always will be, they're going to move. So I think you really, in discussing with your customers early on how you're benefiting them in solving this problem, trying to put a value on that benefit, that will give you an idea of what your pricing should be. And you can do lots of A/B testing on this, or market testing, or control testing. You can speak to one data set about a certain price, another data set about an extravagant price, another data set about a low price. And you can test the reaction to people, whether they're happy to give you the money there and then, whether they're happy to give you their email address. These are all different types of proof of concept that you can use to build up an argument and a case for what your business model is going to be. You'll obviously, as I talked a bit about, you've got your price, you've got which depends on how many units you sell of your product or service will give you your income. You've then got your cost of sales, how much it's going to cost to reach them, and then you've got your overheads and your product development, which is variable. And when you're testing this business model, testing where you spend money on how to reach them, what types of features are going to be the ones that you can charge the most for, you want to be looking to get to a situation where if you spend X dollars or pounds on marketing, you're going to get X plus Y back. And that's when your business model gets really interesting. What do you do when things don't work? This goes back to a bit about learning by doing. It's something that I've faced many times in my career. It's actually, I would argue, an opportunity when things don't work. It's an opportunity to get better, to improve the service you're offering your customers, to learn about doing something in a different way. But you want to try and do this being smart. You don't want to go back to the beginning of your journey again. And what I would argue in trying to pivot or iterate is how you can take all the great stuff that you've developed or learned and keep that, and then change the things that perhaps you've got wrong or haven't worked out so well. So if you've got your customers, your product, and your business model as your or team as your sort of lean triangle, as it were, a very simple place to start is by changing one of those three elements. So either change your product, so you've got the wrong solution, change your customers, so you're targeting the wrong people, or change your business model, so you are trying to price or charge the wrong type of person. I was at UCL in London on Saturday. There was a great judging a pitch competition. There was a great startup that was providing that they were trying to create a marketplace for young people who had skills that startup were interested in employing, but who wanted to travel. So for example, I could go to Berlin, and instead of receiving an income, I could get a bed for free as long as I did a couple of hours work in a particular business there. But they were wanting to charge the traveler. My personal opinion was that they wanted to be charging the business of the people that got money. And they haven't, obviously it was just this weekend, so we haven't heard back from how this might have worked and then changing their business model. But that's a case of how you can change your business model and look at trying to charge someone else, or trying to change the price point, or whether your revenue streams or the team that you've built whether your revenue streams are actually going to come from a different source, or the team that you've built needs to be reshaped, have a different type of skill set. Right, so we've talked about sort of the basics of what lean is. customers, product, and business model or team. We've talked about how you can change or grow to get your business into a right product market fit. And we've started putting a few numbers around that. Once you've started beginning to get customer traction, and in particularly paying customers, you'll find that a lot of people say yes when they mean no. But when people actually part with hard cash, that's a far more secure validation of your business model or startup, or proof of concept. And that's something that investors are very keen to back. A typical, just to give you some numbers, so to get off the ground, there are grants out there, there's friends and family money, there's angel money that can range from a couple of grand to 10, 50, 100 grand. And that's really to get into play and to go through the process that I just described. Once you've got some validation behind your startup or business model, in London, a typical seed round is about 300 grand. And take all the stats that I give you on London and times it by 7 for the US. Obviously, it's a lot larger over there. They've got a market of 300 million early adopters, rather than a fragmented EU that we have over here. That 300 grand will be really designed is to continue growing customers, but go out and build a fantastic product. Once you've built a fantastic product and you continue to grow your customers, then the next round of funding typically in the UK is about anywhere between 500,000 and 4 million. And this is really to go out and prove your business model so that you get to a stage that you've de-risked it, you've taken out all the variables, all the assumptions, all the threats, and that you know that you put X in, you get X plus Y out. That's a typical early stage investment round. If you get to that stage, you then move on to growth stage, venture capital, if you want to go down the venture capital route. You'll come along, people giving you 40, 100 million, and it's just a matter of pouring the money in and scaling out and rolling out your business model. But each of these different stages require have different dynamics to them, I would say. And the money comes with different conditions. Obviously, awards and grants, there's no equity given to you. With friends and family, there's, they're not going to be too tough on you asking for quarterly reports or monthly reporting. They're your friends and your family, after all. But if you lose their money, there are implications there that you may want to consider. VCs will be a lot stricter. They're in the business of making money. They raise funds with clear objectives and outlines and returns. When you're researching VCs, I should probably jump in angels before I come on to VCs. So VCs, angels will be between VCs and friends and family. They're usually doing this to give back, to explore particular interests that they have. They're not going to be as soft as your friends and family, and they're not going to be as hard as VCs. They will probably be some element of smart money as well. So it's not just the money they're giving you, but the domain expertise and or set of skills that they have that they can support you on, and the experience that they have. But still, you don't want to develop a track record for losing angel money. Otherwise, all the angels talk to each other. It'll be quite hard to raise money in the future. And the same with VCs. Their VC money is designed for a particular growth path. They're very focused in a particular area. It's worth doing your research on VCs. They all have particular focuses. And I'd also start approaching people that you want to raise money off in advance. You don't want to just walk in with a straight out call. You want to build a relationship, a bit like dating. And once they get to know you and trust you and like you as a person, then start talking about money, dating or business deals. Raising money is a full-on commitment. It's a full-on job. It usually takes 6 months. but what it does is enable you to grow your startup, and that's why people are in startups. Not exclusively, but a lot of people are, is for the thrill and excitement of growing a business. Yeah, when it goes right, it's great fun, it's very rewarding and very fulfilling. Just got a few minutes left, so just wanted to talk about the challenge quickly. Been very patient. Usually I'd be a bit more interactive in the talk, but obviously we're broadcasting, so has sort of been a bit more one way than usual. But whilst I was working at Startup Bootcamp, kept on coming back to the university space and thinking that it was underdeveloped in terms of supporting young entrepreneurs and people in academia launching their business. I go back to when I started my business at university. This is something that I would have loved to have had when I was at Edinburgh. And effectively, we're trying to put a roadmap out in front of entrepreneurs so that within 100 days of graduating or after the end of the academic year, you could have a funded business with leading mentors to support you, leading mentors from the startup scene in London and the UK to support you in helping you grow your business alongside us. So between now and when end of year exams start, the beginning of May, we're accepting submissions through the website here, ukvarsitystartupchallenge.com. It's should just take you a couple of minutes. It's about 10 questions. We're just asking for the bare bones of what your idea is and what stage you're at. We'll be going, submissions will close in May. We'll be going through a selection process. And we're trying to be as constructive as possible in the selection process. So we'll give you a lot of information on where we think you can, where you're going right and where you're going wrong. But we'll invite the top 50 startups from universities across the UK down to a pitch competition in London, either at the end of June or beginning of July. We're actually in the process of speaking to our sponsors about turning that into a youth innovation conference more generally. And the top 10 finalists from that pitch competition will then invite onto a 4-week pop-up lab or mini accelerator in August in London. We will customize a mentorship and development strategy for each one of you, and do some due diligence, put you through your startup and yourselves through your paces, provide you, put a mentorship team around you, and then we finish the pop-up lab with a demo day in front of 200 leading London investors and media, where we hope most of the finalists will get access to that 300 grand seed funding, and then work with you and support you grow your business from then on. So we're trying to make it as clear as possible and as accessible as possible for founders at universities. It's an area that I'm particularly very passionate about. I've had a bit of experience in, and we've had some great feedback so far. So just want to finish by saying thank you very much for your time. Would love any feedback. It's, I think, the second time I've given this talk, so trying to get better all the time. And if you've got any questions, there are my details. I'll feel free to come up and ask me afterwards, or even ask me now. Thank you. Don't mind. Any questions from the audience? Yeah. So how would you go about finding PR, particularly in art? And so when I started Basecamp, I think startups was a lot more of an art than a science. I look back to what I did at 21, and at the time I was taking all the credit for it. I think I was as lucky as anything. Now there's a lot more scientific methodology that's come through about how you can test different marketing strategies. But I think back to what I was doing, I was running events, I was flyering, I was generating word of mouth, I was trying PR in different publications. So without realizing at the time, I was just trying lots of different things. And you keep on trying until you start finding things that work. So I don't know your business. I don't know what you're trying to do, but I think you need to try lots of different things. I mean, write down in a list all the different types of marketing that you can do. Generally with national PR, you need to go through an agency. I would advise like local PR or industry PR to do yourself because you want to build those relationships. Editors and journalists tend to be a bit more receptive to individuals rather than brokers or agents. But you need to go out and try it, and you need to go out and answer the question, and you need to shout loudly and clearly. That would be my advice. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, you know, I'm in startups, not in social businesses. I think a lot of the methodology and approach is the same. However, with startups, your metrics that you use to judge success on tend to be profit driven. Whereas with social businesses, you tend to measure impact in a different way. However, I don't think you have a social business or a startup type business unless you're solving a problem for a particular person or a particular institution. So they're B2C businesses and B2B businesses. So waste disposal, which I think you mentioned, is perhaps a problem for councils or for government or for waste companies. Or if you also, I didn't quite get your question right, but if like for you're wanting to make chutney, there are people that are needed to buy this chutney. So you need to go and start speaking to the people that you think are going to be buying this chutney about what type of chutney they like, what's important to them, you know, what important in terms of ingredients, where do they buy it, how much they pay for it, what type of packaging they like, what type of stories behind companies that they buy, you know, the brand that they engage with. So you need to go out and start asking those types of questions. So I would argue that it's still, whether it's a business or a customer, you're still solving a problem for something or someone. Does that make sense? Oh, I've got to have some more questions out there. I was talking for about 40 minutes. Yeah. I would, I think that culturally we're slightly different, but the US and the rest of the world, but the UK, you know, the US has got this yes attitude. They're far more risk-seeking. Their whole national identity and culture and economy is geared up towards starting businesses. I think the Brits are a bit more conservative generally. From an investment perspective, the US investors are far more likely to throw money at 20, 30 businesses and hope that a couple will come back in the green. In the UK, it's a bit more. I sometimes use the analogy. I'm a skier, right? So the Austrians have loads of skiers. They can just chuck them all into a melting pot, and whoever comes out wins. We get a skier, if we can call them good. We get a skier about once in a generation. So we have to really nurture that skier and support them, and channel all our energy and skill and expertise into supporting that. And I think we have a bit more of that in the investment culture here. They're not, they want to get a return on every one of their risks, and they do a lot more due diligence on investing in startups. I would say from a startup perspective as well, or a founder perspective, we don't necessarily have that sort of carefree approach to loss of face or failure or learning, depending on what side of the coin you look at, that they do in the States. So I think the States is generally a bit more gung-ho. The numbers stack up a bit better. Compared to us being a bit more conservative, a bit more risk averse over here. It is changing. London's becoming a fantastic ecosystem in particular. You're beginning to get some billion-dollar companies come out of there, which is a huge milestone to jump through. And I would also add to that San Francisco is also different to the rest of the States. San Francisco has a very unique business model about growth, like conquering markets and conquering global markets, and a very unique sort of funding model behind that, which is not particularly applicable in the rest of the world.
What are your business models you're looking out to, like top trends in the future? What do you think is coming up next? Would you agree with what the magazines and literature say in general, like connected internet and something like that? Or do you have like your specific topics and trends you see coming in the next years?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on trends. I would almost say I'm an unexpert. If everyone's swimming one way, I tend to look the other, just as a natural inclination. But yeah, I think it's well commented on that innovation is moving beyond software into connected devices, into hardware. I think that incubating and developing that type of technology is going to take slightly longer. University clusters are great places for that type of technology to come out of. And I think also you're going to see innovation in a far more diverse range of industries. I mean, I was just over at Idea Space early, and we had a walk around all the great sort of West Cambridge campuses, nanotech, biotech, space tech. I think it's a really interesting century to be alive. I think there's going to be a lot of change. Hopefully all on the balance for the good. Sure. So there's lots of research online. It's lean customer development that you want to research. But in doing market research and customer development, I think what you want to do is build up an argument like you would do in a case of law, for example. So say that when you're starting out, you don't know where you're going to hit a gold, as it were. So you want to try lots of things. So you might have data sets of 20 or 30 people getting out of the building, going and interviewing customers. Obviously, the way that you frame those questions are very important as well, and there's lots of information online about that. But you've got to be aware of your framing. And also, I think you want to be looking to test the assumptions that you're making about people's behavior and what you think they're likely to behave. As I touched on earlier, there's, a no is not necessarily a no, a no is about a particular thing. So you want to, how you frame the structure of your questionnaire. You think you want to have some open-ended questions, which are sort of more qualitative. You want to have sort of 1 to 5s or A, B, C, D, E's, which is more quantitative, so you get a balanced perspective. And you really want to test if people will give you their personal data, if people will give you their money. And you'll be surprised, if it's a good idea and you come sell yourself well, what people will give you. So those are all different ways of establishing proof of concept. And then once you are feeling, you say you've got a sort of 60 or 70% positive response for a data set of 20, 30, then you want to maybe go to 50 to 100 person data set. And then 300 or 400 after that. And actually the people that you're interviewing should become your first customers. So you're actually doing customer development at the same time as market research. So you're working smart like that as well. I'm a big fan of the face-to-face interview. I think you can read a lot into people's body languages, which you can't necessarily do through a Google Doc or a MailChimp form or a SurveyMonkey form. But if you can't do face-to-face, phone is good. And there's lots of ways about to drive traffic to online forms, whether it's pay-per-click, social media, what have you. So I think you want to build up a progressive argument. The assumptions that you make, an investor or a smart investor will test you on. So you want to have answers prepared for those, backed up by, well, actually, when we went out and asked our customers, 3/4 said this, a quarter said this, the quarter said that this. When we asked them again, it was for these 4 reasons. So this is why we've developed the product in this way to account for that sort of downside. So you want to make an argument in that kind of way, if that helps.
And then you mentioned the UK Varsity Challenge, and since the lean movement involves pivoting as well, right? If my idea doesn't work, I'll try something else. Pivot, and go forward. How is that incorporated in the UK Varsity Challenge? Because if I enter an idea, right, so let's say I work on parts of the business plan, I enter an idea. Let's say you would pick my idea and go forward. Do I need to stick to that idea till the end, or am I able to adapt it throughout the process? And what happens if I get 300,000, let's say, I'm one of the winners, or I'm able to achieve that? Would they invest in myself or in the team, or would they invest in my idea?
Sure. So few things there, talking about lean and investment and iteration. We're just starting out. This is our first year. We're running a 6-month program. In future years, I think it'll be a 10 or 12-month program. So we hope to start the journey or the journey discovery process a lot earlier. So there's opportunity throughout the year to evolve and iterate and develop your product, your customer base, your business model. Through the challenge, we're just facilitating the introduction. So it's up to the investor whether they want to invest or not. It's not an award. It's not a cash prize or a give me. You've got to go out and earn it, and you've got to make a business case for it. It's the real world. And my inclination is that what investors are looking for is particularly seed investors who will be giving you the 300 grand, is a good team that work well, have the right skill set, and have proven that when they've come up against challenges already, that they've been able to overcome them. So that's developing a product, pivoting, iterating, what have you, that they can build a product. It's important that you can demonstrate to an investor that you can build a product. A lot of people get that wrong. And you can grow and develop a product. But most importantly, that you're solving a problem that people want, you know how to talk to them, you know how to access them, and you've got them paying you to prove it. I would say that that is what you need to do to get investment. Your journey up until then, people's journeys, you know, no two journeys are the same. Different markets are different types of products. Different markets have different characteristics, different types of products, take different lengths of time to develop or have different levels of sophistication. So it's quite hard to put that in a box. But generally speaking, yes, certainly iterate. It's very unlikely that you're going to hit it right first time. Iterate smart, evolve your thinking, in a smart way. And actually, this isn't just to do a startup. This is actually quite a good way of just doing business generally. I'm speaking to a lot of corporates at the moment about adopting their business techniques and adapting towards what the startup movement has learned. But being in touch with your customers, getting regular feedback, being very nimble and flexible at how you develop your product, your service, your offering, constantly having these feedback loops, but knowing who you're charging and what you can charge and how you're going to increase that is effectively just sort of, common sense business, I would argue. But it's amazing how hard common sense business can be sometimes. Does that answer your question? Any more questions? One last one, and I'm around after as well. Sure. Obviously, most investors will have, within your agreement with them, which is a term sheet, there'll be various conditions. We will support you and on them to facilitate that discussion so that you come out with an agreement that you're both happy with. I would look at it more as, they want a certain amount of due diligence done, and they want, I think the spirit of the agreement is very important, but I would very much see it as them supporting you and enabling you rather than trying to control you. Yes, they want monthly, they like monthly reporting, they like quarterly reporting, you'd like them to go to them for things that are unusual or and to have a good relationship with them. If things start going bad, there is a legal context to it. I think that tends to be worst case scenario, but things can go south very quickly if people bust up. That's why it's important to have these conversations at the start. But what I hope will happen is you have the beginnings of a very good product, you've got some good customers giving you some good feedback, and your investors, your mentors, and ourselves will support you on your journey of growing your startup business. They're there for advice if you need it, for you to sound things off, to talk through the challenges that you're facing daily, weekly, monthly. We're there to help you make a business that's going to change your life and is going to change other people's lives. That's what we hope is going to come out of this. Great. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Fergie, I wanted to thank you that you reached out to us, and we wanted to basically do the same thing, which is inspire people and get them started and make their dreams come true. So if it's being us inspiring here, you being here, and you doing the UK Startup Challenge, it's also helping these guys to get it started. And yeah, we're basically doing the same thing. And thank you for that, definitely. Thank you for coming out. And one more round of applause, please, to Fergie, please. Okay, mic check, boom. You know what? I see a lot of new faces today, so I'm gonna shamelessly promoting our society, if you forgive me. We've having an election now for the positions of president, not vice president. Sorry, Timoni. Events director, marketing director, and treasurer. And if you go to angloenterprise.com, you'll see this page. And if you go apply now, you can select it and apply it today. And we'll call you or for an interview. And yeah, and we'll take it from there. And we'll have election at the end of April, I believe. Second thing, I wanted to say that we're gonna have a social next week. I know you guys, it's been a pretty rough semester, I guess. So guys need to chill a little bit. And I will give a 1 minute to Yanis afterwards when I'm done to talk about what we're gonna do next week. So it's gonna be fun in a pub. We're gonna play bowling, I think, something like that. And one more thing, which is actually a flagship event. If you've seen the poster here, we're organizing a conference in 28th of March, Saturday. It's called Tiny Conference. It's a non-social enterprise, and we've invited a great speakers, executive director of innovation center from Cambridge Judge Business School, Carrie Bedingfield from 50 Generation. We've invited. Future Business Centers Director, and a couple of companies who've done really great stuff with social enterprise. And we believe that entrepreneurship and enterprise should be innately social, and it's helping others, helping yourself, mostly helping others as well. So please come and register on tinyconference.org. It will be alive tomorrow or on Friday. And register, please, and come down and have a really lovely day with us. And yeah, I'll give the mic to Yanis, please.
Hey guys, the good thing is I don't need to do a mic check. He did it already. Now it's my turn to inspire you a little bit. We all worked really, really hard. It's the mid of the semester. We have a mid-semester social next week on Wednesday. It's gonna start at 8. We're gonna network a little bit, exchange ideas. We have a couple of games lined up. Gonna go from pub to pub and probably end up with most of you guys in refs. I'm gonna organize a couple of good deals and just have a great time, I would say. It's my minute. Got another 20 seconds. I got another 20 seconds, so please all join. Once for the mid-semester social, and then also for the tiny conference. Okay, thank you. You got a question? Close. Exactly. We're gonna promote it. Thank you very much. It's gonna be a themed event. So since we all want to conduct business, we all want to grow our startups, and we need to work hard, we thought about the theme business nerds, because you really need to get on working in order to be successful. Be as nerdy as you can be, and at the same time as business as you can be. Just come, have fun, and join us. Thank you.
Okay, mic drop. Rinse out. Okay, Enterprise Society, everyone, election, social, and tiny conference. Thank you very much. Thank you. And please, let's start the networking event.